Daily Detroit is brought to you by the community. Support our work at patreon.com/dailydetroit.
This is your Daily Detroit for Friday, March 27th, 2020. I'm Sven Gustafson.
And I'm Jer Stays. A reminder that if things sound a little different lately, that's because we're practicing social distancing and doing the show remotely. I'm in the studio in Detroit's North End.
And I'm in my basement in Ferndale with Daily Detroit's official podcat, Julius. We've got a lot to talk about, so let's get through it together.
The coronavirus outbreak in Michigan, it's getting worse. There were 801 new confirmed cases of COVID-19 in Michigan over the past 24 hours and 32 deaths. New numbers released Friday bring the total number of COVID-19 cases in Michigan to 3,657, with 92 fatalities. 65% of those who have died are men. However, the cases are still basically balanced between the sexes. Confirmed cases have risen in the city of Detroit to 1,075 and 23 fatalities.
Jared, just as we were recording this, Detroit Police Chief James Craig has tested positive for coronavirus. The 63-year-old Craig is reportedly in good physical health and will remain under quarantine, but in command of the police department. Assistant Chief James White will run day-to-day operations. White himself was formerly under quarantine.
In Oakland County, there are 824 cases and 26 deaths. The rest of Wayne County, not including the city, has 735 cases and 14 deaths. Macomb County, 404 cases and 14 deaths.
Michigan ranks 5th among states for total number of confirmed cases. Meanwhile, the U.S. has now overtaken both China and Italy for the dubious mantle of the highest number of confirmed coronavirus cases in the world. The U.S. now has more than 94,000 confirmed coronavirus cases, according to Johns Hopkins University, which is tracking numbers globally. Also, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers says that the TCF Center, aka Cobo Center, the Detroit Pistons Performance Center, and the dormitories at Wayne State University in Detroit may be converted to become alternate healthcare facilities for coronavirus patients.
All right, Sven, I understand some of the Detroit automakers are working to help out healthcare providers who are dealing with the coronavirus. What is happening?
So we talked about it last week on this past week on the show when General Motors, it was a week ago today, actually, General Motors announced that they were partnering with a company called Ventec out of Washington State to help increase production of ventilators. More recently, they've come out with details that they identified up one of their components plants in Indiana that they were going to retool to do this. Ford, meanwhile, announced its own partnership with both 3M and GE Healthcare. It's the healthcare division of General Electric, to make a whole bunch of different kinds of equipment, ventilators, something called powered air purifying respirators, and some other equipment, as well as that Ford was going to take on production of making these transparent plastic face shields. These are like protective face masks for healthcare providers and potentially even, people who work in grocery stores, potentially, that they were going to make that out of a subsidiary company that they own here in Plymouth. And Ford actually gave an update Friday morning. It said it's already delivered more than 2,700 of these plastic face shields to a bunch of hospitals all across Southeast Michigan.
I've only been catching little pieces of this, but what's the latest on getting production started? Because it seems like this is getting to be a little complicated.
Complicated is a huge understatement, Jer. This has been a real roller coaster of a day. And as I said to you offline right before we started recording this, this has given me a sense for what it must be like to be a White House reporter, where every day is like a roller coaster and it's like this hopeless race to stay up to date because the goalposts are constantly moving. So President Trump spent much of Friday morning on Twitter. He's involved in this whole effort right now, and he was attacking both Ford and GM. He was reacting, I think, to a New York Times story that broke Thursday night that said that the Trump administration essentially balked at the price tag, reportedly $1.5 billion for the GM Ventec ventilator project. and decided that that they needed more time to shop other proposals. So Friday morning rolls around, and Trump releases a stream of tweets, lots of all caps, letters. Start making ventilators now! Exclamation point. And then another one, says Ford, get going on ventilators fast! Exclamation point! Exclamation point! Exclamation point!
Hashtag all the exclamation points.
Oh, lots of exclamation points. I would just note really quick, little side note, that Ford has said that GE and 3M and itself, they all came together independently, like without anybody's prodding, before they contacted the White House about their own, proposal to make medical equipment for coronavirus. So there was no coordination on this really from the federal government, despite what Trump seems to be trying to indicate. Trump also said that GM has been reportedly kind of, squishy with its numbers, kind of overpromising how many ventilator units it could actually build. At one point, he urged GM to reopen its shuttered plant in Lordstown, Ohio, to start production there. Apparently, he's unaware that GM actually sold that plant to another company. And in one of his tweets, he wrote, quote, "Always a mess with Mary B." That's a reference to GM's chairwoman and CEO, Mary Barra. So the latest, and again, I told you this was a roller coaster. The latest is that both GM and Ventec said that they would start production of Ventec's FDA-approved ventilators at the GM plant in Kokomo, Indiana. They'd be ready to start shipping as soon as next month. GM said it could increase production to more than 10,000 ventilators per month, potentially more down the line. GM also said it would start manufacturing surgical masks at a plant in Warren starting next week and ramp up to as many as 100,000 masks a day. Left unclear in all of this is whether the federal government will actually be paying for any of this equipment, or if, GM and Ventec are just going to be kind of doing it on their own good graces. Not clear.
So has Trump used the Defense Production Act?
Apparently he has. This was kind of a point of contention. A lot of observers were kind of hoping that he would use this. This, again, is an act that Congress passed back in the Korean War, meant to make manufacturers start the production of goods that are needed during times of crisis. Trump has mentioned that he could use this law, but has resisted. Reportedly, he had a lot of kind of pushback from business groups like the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and so forth. But apparently he's using it now. And apparently he used it in a very targeted way to get General Motors and Ventec to, commit to starting to do this. So it's not clear exactly how all of this is going to work. And I think it's been a long time since the president of the United States has used this act, frankly.
Well, and if you use the DPA, as I understand it, you actually have to provide loans and some sort of funding in order to ramp this up.
Sure. You can't expect private companies to just, switch over, retool their lines and start production of things. I mean, you're talking about that's hundreds of millions of dollars in some cases to do that. So you can't just expect companies are going to be able to do that. Much to be determined and sorted out here for sure.
All right.
Yes.
So how are the auto companies weathering this with all of their U.S. factories temporarily closed?
Yeah, so all three Detroit automakers, GM, Ford, Fiat Chrysler, have all tapped lines of credit totaling billions of dollars, that's with a B, to try and weather this economic storm, the shutdown of their factories and everything. Ford also earlier this week abandoned its 2020 financial forecast for investors and suspended paying dividends. Ford now says it will temporarily cut salaries of 300 top executives. That's after Standard & Poor's downgraded its debt to junk status. And Ford actually has come out and said it now wants to try to reopen some of its plants, including one in Dearborn where they make the F-150 pickup truck, by April 6th. For its part, GM has extended its production shutdown indefinitely. It's following Ford's example, though, by deferring a portion of pay for all of its salaried employees.
Another person Trump's been going after during the coronavirus crisis? Well, that would be Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer. Trump criticized the governor during a phone interview on Fox News, saying she's, quote, not stepping up and doesn't know what's going on. He made his comments after Whitmer publicly complained about a lack of coordination and medical supplies from the federal government.
Now, in an interview early Friday with WWJ, a Detroit AM station, the governor said the state is having even more trouble getting equipment to fight the coronavirus. That's because, Whitmer says, companies are being told not to send supplies to Michigan. Whitmer says she's asked the White House for a phone call to speak with the president. Whitmer has also asked Trump for an emergency declaration for Michigan.
If true, Sven, what? Like I'm having trouble processing these stories today.
You and everybody else, man. It's, we have a worsening global pandemic here in Michigan. We're the 5th worst state for number of confirmed cases, and it's getting worse. The numbers took a huge jump today. And yet we've got this political sniping, not only between politicians, but between the president and private companies. To say we don't need this distraction right now is like a huge understatement of the year. We have to get serious and think about how we respond to this coronavirus pandemic and how we can help our beleaguered healthcare system handle this crush of sick people.
There's more information coming out about plans for K12 schooling in the state, which I know parents are very keen to know about. In the same interview, Governor Gretchen Whitmer said that it's, quote, probably very unlikely, unquote, that students will go back to school before the end of the year. And this is kind of big news. The governor's office followed up with a statement saying that there will be an announcement next week about this that, quote, ensures our seniors graduate and that no child is held back as a result of a district's ability to provide face-to-face instruction during the COVID-19 school closure, unquote. Now, this isn't official, but my gut says this is coming, and you should mentally prepare for it. Things, if you read between the lines, have been pretty clearly telegraphed by this administration lately. Sven, you're the parent on the line. Quick thoughts?
Well, I'll tell you, my brother and his family just paid us a visit. They were out riding their bikes, and we were all standing in my driveway before we started recording, practicing social distancing, I will note. But they said they had heard the same rumor, and they said that they think what she's doing is basically giving parents the weekend to maybe kind of slowly digest this news before they make it official. It seems pretty clear that it's coming. And I would just say that I hope you like your children, because you're going to be seeing a lot of them in closed quarters in the next coming months.
Michigan's overall population is stalled while Metro Detroit's population is dropping. Where are people going? Some are shifting to the west side of the state. New 2019 census estimates released Thursday show that Wayne County led the state in population loss, while the gainers are to the west, Kent County, home to Grand Rapids, as well as Ottawa County. Michigan's population grew by only 2,800 residents, basically flat among a population of just under 10 million people. Oakland County's growth has basically ground to a halt, gaining just under 900, and Macomb County gained nearly 1,200 people. Wayne County's drop of 5,100 people doesn't portend well for the city of Detroit's population either. The population of the 6-county region of Oakland, Macomb, Wayne, Lapeer, Livingston, and St. Clair counties dropped by 2,400 people. The population of the 6-county region of Oakland, Macomb, Wayne, Lapeer, Livingston, and St. Clair counties dropped by 2,400 people. Metro Detroit held steady at the 14th largest regional population in the nation, but we currently have fewer residents living in our area than we did in 1970.
That's a brutal statistic, Jer. It does, and it suggests that we have failed to do enough to make ourselves desirable, not only to our own residents who live here, but as a place where we can actually attract other people to come move. We're always going to have a somewhat uphill battle just because we are the Rust Belt, but especially Pittsburgh is a great example of a city that's shed its Rust Belt image and has grown and prospered, right? They've reinvented themselves. The uphill battle for us is weather. And there's frankly nothing we can do about that. We have long, brutal winters. They're gray. Okay. We take that as a given, but we have not done enough. We have failed to have the political courage to invest in ourselves, to make ourselves attractive, both to retain people and attract new residents.
Remember that throughout the coronavirus situation, we're doing shows 7 days a week because of all the updates, not only sharing the latest news each day, but conversations with people to help guide us through this country-changing pandemic.
I'd say world-changing, Jarrett, as a matter of fact. In the coming days, we will have useful tips for small business owners who are trying to find a way through all this tumult, as well as some more information on filing unemployment claims, as well as the long-term economic view of unemployment from a local economist.
With that, I'm Jer Stays.
And I'm Sven Gustafsson. Take care of each other from a distance. See you next time.